All right, let's jump into Time Machine and go back to 2003. It's a year that in some ways feels like a lifetime ago, but in others, incredibly close. We're going to take a look at this really pivotal year for online education, all through the personal journals of a pioneer in the field, Morten Flate Paulsen. It's a story about how the future was being built, even when the present felt pretty uncertain.
So, our journey starts in a hotel room in Barcelona. Paulsen's there to help create the future of learning, but on the TV, CNN is just blasting news about the present, and it's heavy. He feels a sense of dread. And it's this clash, between creating something new and the turmoil of the world that really sets the scene for everything that happened that year.
So why was he in Barcelona? Well, he was there for the kickoff meeting of something called the Delphi project. This was a huge EU initiative, and their goal was to build an observatory, kind of like a watchtower, to keep an eye on all the cool e-learning innovations popping up all over Europe. So while the rest of the world was holding its breath about the war, this group was laser-focused on what was coming next.
And that brings us perfectly to our first section, a world in turmoil. Because you really can't grasp the innovation that was happening in 2003 without understanding the world it was born into. It was a time of just immense tension, but it was also a time when everyday life and work and even art just stubbornly kept going.
Just 2 months after that meeting in Barcelona, that threat on the news became very, very real. The timeline was just incredibly fast. The world was glued to the news as a new conflict kicked off, and that tense feeling sort of became the background music to daily life for so many people.
And yet, in the middle of all that heavy talk of war and politics, Paulsen and his colleague Torstein Rikkedal found this amazing little moment of humanity. They found last-minute €1 tickets to the opera. It's just this beautiful, small reminder that even when things feel really uncertain, people will always look for culture, for beauty, and for connection.
Okay, so from those very human moments in Barcelona, we're going to hop over to Hamburg, Germany. Because over here, this new world of online learning wasn't just some academic idea. Nope, it was turning into a serious business, and the stakes were getting high. So this was Paulsen's first take on the big 2003 European Association for Distance Learning Conference. And that phrase, a gentleman's club for wealthy correspondence school owners. It just paints such a vivid picture, doesn't it? You can almost smell the old leather and cigar smoke. It's the old guard, an industry built on paper and postage stamps, suddenly having to deal with the internet.
But this old guard, they weren't naive. They knew the ground was shifting right under their feet. I mean, look at the conference theme, survival of the fittest. That's not just some catchy phrase. For them, it was a very real, very urgent warning. It meant their entire way of doing business, something they'd built over decades, could just disappear. The pressure was on to adapt or get left behind.
So that begs the question, right? If it's survival of the fittest, what were the new tools that were going to decide who made it? Let's take a look at the actual technology that was starting to completely reshake education.
One of the big game changers was speech synthesis technology. Paulsen School, NKI, teamed up with a company called ReadSpeaker to do something that was pretty radical at the time. They decided to make all of their course materials listenable. This wasn't a gimmick. It was a huge leap for accessibility. They basically created what you could argue was the world's first school you could listen to from start to finish.
And get this wasn't some small test run. We're talking 6,000 online students across 400 different courses who suddenly got access to this service totally free. It was a massive rollout of a new tech designed to help literally everyone, from students with visual impairments to people who just learn better by listening.
At the exact same time, the software that runs all of online learning, the LMS, or Learning Management System, was becoming a real battleground. And right there in Norway, a pretty fierce rivalry was heating up that would end up having an impact around the world.
This timeline tells such a classic tech story. You have 2 Norwegian companies, Fronter and It's Learning, that pop up within a year of each other. They compete so hard and so effectively that they actually make Norway a world leader in how many schools are using an LMS. Then, after years of buyouts and deals, in a crazy twist, one rival ends up buying the other. It's a perfect example of how intense local competition can spark incredible innovation and eventually lead to one big player.
But here's the thing that's so important to remember. None of this tech, none of these business deals, they don't just happen in a bubble. It's all driven by people, by human connection. It's about the networks we build both in our jobs and in our personal lives.
So this is Torstein Rikkedal. Remember him? The guy who went to the opera in Barcelona? Here he is getting a huge honor, an honorary doctorate for his life's work. It just goes to show how incredibly important it is to have mentors and colleagues who push you and who you can learn from.
But networks aren't just for your career, right? This number, 25, this represents the people, 6 families, including Paulsen's, who had formed this super tight-knit adoption network. In 2003, they were celebrating their 10th anniversary of supporting each other.
And this quote about their shared journey, it really gets to the heart of it. This wasn't a network for closing business deals, it was a network for doing life. And that kind of shared support, that resilience, is often the invisible engine behind professional success. It's a whole lot easier to go out and try to build the future when you know you've got a community that has your back.
So, after this incredibly intense year of global turmoil, crazy tech innovation, and these deep human connections, it was all about to pay off in some really big ways.
And then in November, bam! All that work at NKI, the speech synthesis, the LMS development, everything, it got recognized with Norway's biggest, most prestigious tech award. People call it the Oscar of the Norwegian tech scene. It was just this huge moment of validation for the entire team.
And listen to why they won. The jury's comments are so key here. They didn't just see a local school using some new software. No, they saw an organization that had completely transformed itself and was making waves way beyond Norway's borders.
And as if winning a massive award wasn't enough for 1 month, that very same month, Paulsen published his big book, Online Education and Learning Management Systems. It was this huge undertaking, trying to pour years and years of lessons learned into a single volume.
The reaction from around the world was immediate, and it was huge. A top review from Canada's leading distance university called it a must-have resource.
And this review from Ireland points out something else that was really important. It celebrated that this was a major book coming from a European perspective, in a field that was, and often still is, dominated by American voices. The book really helped put Scandinavia on the global map for online education.
You know, when you look back at a year like 2003, a year of war and so much anxiety, it is absolutely incredible to see the foundations of our modern digital life being laid. And it leaves you with a pretty big question for our own time, doesn't it? With all the uncertainty we're facing today, what breakthroughs, what connections, what future is quietly being built right now while we're not looking?